Welcome back to Trollspeilet. Today we're going to talk about squatting deeper in order to aim higher, as it were, where we are going to show you a little bit of a video of a horse work in hand, and we are going to go deeper into how it train/practice. Talk a little bit about, I like to talk about that distinction between training on the one hand and practice on the other hand. Which is sometimes something, of course, that you can't really separate out. But in my opinion, it's important to have the separation in your head so you know what you're actually doing. Sometimes you can practice something, which is try to do something over and over until you are better at it or good at it or can manage it or wherever you want to draw that line. And training, on the other hand, is something that changes the physiology of your body so that your musculature grows stronger, or your ligaments or tendons or stuff like that.
So when you're practicing, it's sort of the coordination you're practicing?
That's what I'm trying to aim at. Aiming like
changing
like
the
you can,
pattern.
In my a thing that I like to say is that you practice darts. You don't train darts to get enormous triceps or fingertips in order to throw the arrow. You practice it so that the hand-eye coordination becomes really good, right? And the distinction between that is something that is it needs to be sort of the background for what we're trying to show today, in my opinion. And we are going to show Ares. 15-year-old horse worked in hand, and we are going to show his strengths and weaknesses. We will see how the hind end attaches to the front end and see what happens in between those two things.
And perhaps some of you would have seen the last stream before Christmas where we're talking about what is collection, and we were looking at pictures. If you haven't seen it, it might be a good idea to just go back and watch it, because it's there still.
Yep. So well, have you got anything more you want to say before we run along?
No, I don't think so.
No. So maybe we will run along and see if we can see a little bit of video. If our boss can manage. There we go. There's Ares. I almost said trying his hand at the piaffe. So what we're doing, of course, is we are in this instance with Ares at this moment. We were practicing.
Yeah.
And then at the end, there was an element of training in it.
Yeah.
The way I see it. So what we saw in this little short section is that the horse first piaffes a little bit, and then he sits down pretty deep. And as he sat down pretty deep, he became so tense through his back that you can see that he sort of inverts, so he lifts the front end up like that with his head instead of lifting through the back the way we would prefer it to be.
And this is also relevant for other training as well. Training like in forwards riding. You can see how the back is carrying and lifting the front end.
Yep.
It's really interesting to see that in sort of slow motion.
Yeah, yes.
Because the horse is on the spot.
It's like when you train yourself in squats or deadlifts, stuff like that, you're standing very still, you're not moving. Your legs, they stand in the same spot throughout the exercise, so that you can feel whether your knees tend to cave in or out or forward or back. So it sort of takes your running training or whatever, jumping, whatever you are up to doing, and it puts it into slow motion and shows in in slow movement what you could be better at.
Yeah, because that is very difficult to change while you're running at full speed.
It's so difficult that it's nigh impossible.
And how is this relevant for to the horse? Last stream we were talking about this, how the horse can turn his knees or his stifles out or in, and how that influences his ability to tuck his bum under himself, like sitting down and bend the hind legs. That is important to practice that and also train the strength while the horse is on the spot.
Yeah. Is it possible to see that again? And I shall try and get into it. You can see here that the horse is not moving very much forward, and as he rises onto his hind legs, you can see that he sinks backwards. And he sinks backwards, and you can see that the musculature around the knee in the thigh is very, very it pops out. You can see it very clearly. And maybe especially in the front of the thigh, which is because the horse is sitting down and back. So what makes him not fall on his bum is the musculature on the front of the knee, like that. On the front of if this is the knee, the musculature attaching here keeps him from just dropping his butt to the ground, right? Yeah. So the quads for us. And so the horse is here moving backwards, and then the quad is important, right?
Yeah. And what I also saw was that the horse was trying to lift his front end, but he was not able to do it because the back was sagging, and then he was sort of kicking off with his front legs. That is also something that we talked about last.
It's very important to have this distinction in our heads, because if we are really precise in our language, like the horse is actually lifting his front end. His front legs are not on the ground. So, but still, you and I would say that, no, it's not lifting from behind. And you're like, what? But his front legs aren't even on the ground. No, they're done with that because they kicked off. Yeah. But at the same time, you can actually lift the front end with a dropped back, standing still.
Yes, but it's not that powerful.
It is possible to do it. I dare you to do it under a really heavy yoke, though. All right.
So can we see it again? Just
one more time, and now watch the back of the horse forwards around the withers. So it's all right now. Dropping a little bit there, and we'll see now he's dropping more, and it's very difficult, and now it really becomes tense around the withers and pushes off and lifts his head up high. But still did a very good job in his hind legs, so I just relax and allow him to move on.
Yeah, of course. He was trying, and this is not something that you could force a horse to do.
Oh, I think I could.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't.
No.
It's important that quite often it's like it's often said that you can't force the horse to do this, that, or the other, but you can. It's not a sustainable way of training. No, exactly. It will ruin you or the horse, and nobody will enjoy watching it. But it is possible. This is important to bring along, so we're not discussing the wrong things. I feel that's important. Could we roll the next video? So the horse is now really, really trying to do stuff from behind. All right, and he's moving forward. That's interesting, isn't it?
This is more like a tete-a-tete or something like that.
Yeah. It's the tete-a-tete is sort of like this. It's a stylized sort of combat canter. But this is very, I would say, almost formalized. It's a funny way of talking about training. When you're training in your training center and doing your squats and whatnot, they call that the formalized body language. While when you're running around in the forest or fighting or dancing or whatever you are, then it's not a formalized language. You're just expressing whatever you're trying to say. So it's like the difference between learning how to move your pen and learning how to write something that'll say something.
Draw something. Yeah.
Or draw something that will express something. Can we look at that once more? So what I look at here is that the hind legs, they want to push off and push the whole horse forward. You see that? It's not every stride. Sometimes it just lifts his hind legs underneath. But in some of the strides you can see him pushing off. So he pushes his whole weight forward. Now it has changed from practice to training.
Yeah. Because this is the piaffe we saw in the first movie. It's not that hard like for the muscles.
No.
So it doesn't tire the horse. It's not very tiring to work in a piaffe like smoothly and slowly and not with it much power.
No, it's not hard until you have that collection and impulsion at the same time thing. Some of the old masters they call this. They say that the piaffe should be a passage in place, and the passage should be a piaffe moving forward, which is an idea that tries to express impulsion, right?
Impulsion in the piaffe.
Yes.
But first it needs to be a coordination exercise.
First and foremost, the first thing that happens for the piaffe, in my experience, is that the horse becomes flexible enough to get into the correct position. It's like when I squat, do my training, I try to keep my calves, the shins, perpendicular to the ground. So that means that I'm not allowed to push my knee forward. I know that someone was discussing this earlier today as well, I believe, in your threads. And so it's important that the knee doesn't push forward in front of the toes
when you're squatting.
When you're squat training, depending on what you're trying to train, right? So if your end goal is to squat well, you can train your squat with the knees forward. That's all right. You just get very strong in the front side of the thigh, and the ligaments on the front side of your knee become very strong. What I'm trying to do, though, is to strengthen the back side of my thighs and
that
my
is
butt.
what we want with the horses.
And that's what we want in the horses too. So what I want then is for for me then to sit back down into my own haunches, as it were, and without the shins falling forward at all. So I have to be precise with that, and when I do, then I can activate the correct musculature for what I'm trying to do. And you can see the same thing with Ares here, that especially in the first little leap he does here, you can see the whole horse is pushing himself forward from the hind legs. Can we see that again? Pay attention in the beginning, like here, and that one, and that one. And now he's just picking his hind legs up.
Yeah.
So for a couple of strides there, like the second and the fourth or something like that, it's difficult to count while you're looking at it, right? You can see that he's pushing off and lifting himself forward in one unit.
And that is, for me, that is the most interesting part, that the bending of the hind legs actually ends up in lifting the forehand.
Yeah.
And that we could see that here much better than in the first video.
Yep. So this will strengthen the horse.
Yep.
And it's important now that we point out that to be strong can be many different things, and our definitions may vary. Quite a lot of people feel that, for instance, you get very strong if you walk in the forest or walk mountains, and that makes your legs strong. And that is quite right, of course. For walking the mountains, you become very strong by walking in the mountains, but you don't become very, very explosive in your musculature by walking the mountains. And what we are looking for here is to create strength in that more towards explosivity, more towards rising how much you can lift in one or a few lifts, as opposed to doing the same thing over and over and over and over as you do when you walk. You do the same stride over and over and over and over, which is a strength that we do not in any way look down on, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. So if you, like, a lot of people say that it's very important that you take your horse on trips in the forest, in terrain that's rough and difficult. And that is very important. That will strengthen the ligaments. It will strengthen joints. It will help the horse move in ways that they normally do not move in. And that is very important. But that doesn't make the horse strong. It prepares the horse very well for strength training, which is a little bit different. So what we are looking at now is strength training, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The most efficient way to train strength is to warm up and find out how much you can lift once in that particular exercise. So when I work my horses in hand, like we are looking at here, I warm up until I find that the horse does the exercise very well compared to all the other tries that day. So it sits deep and or lifts through the back and or, you know, there can be many variables that you try to follow. And when you can see, sometimes I've managed like once or twice, you can see the horse is almost trembling. I'm not asking anything, I'm just touching him carefully, but he knows that he's trying to express all his power. And when you can see that he goes, the exercise is over. And then you have done, the horse has then lifted the maximum of his capacity. And then you will have to let his central nervous system rest for a while. So this is like, it's very easy to think also that big muscles equal strong muscles, which is almost always true. Bigger muscles are stronger than smaller muscles normally, but doing strength training to this extent, when you practice down or train until you can have only one rep, and you do that one rep, one heavy lift like that, that does not make your musculature bigger. It only makes you better at using more muscle fibers at the same time.
The muscle fibers that you've got already.
The ones that are there. It's like when people start training with weights, it is quite normal that if you haven't trained with weights before and you're a normal-ish person of some 15 to, I don't know, 45, 50 years old, something like that, it is quite normal to double your strength in 3 months. And you can hardly see any difference in the size of the musculature. So what happens is that you're training your brain to grab more of the muscle fibers that are already there and tell them what to do right now. And when you feel yourself shaking with it, you're learning to do the new thing. So we will... Sorry?
That is quite interesting when it comes to horses as well, because many riders don't want the horse to become heavier, like the show jumpers and eventers and stuff, but they can become stronger.
Yes. Stronger can be without being heavier.
Yeah.
That's why we do strength training, or that's why weightlifters do strength training and still keep to their weight classes. Right. Let's roll next video, shall we? Turned around now. So this way the horse is managing to keep a rounder neck and withers. Very nice. That was deep and good, wasn't it?
That's the best one. It's really good.
It's the best one that far. Can we see that again? Just roll that over a few times, will you?
Because see that he's lifting his back more and he's sitting down very pleasantly, and you can see how the piaffe can lift the forehand.
Yeah, you also see that just after this, when he goes forward again, you can see that the energy just wants to run and flow forward. You can see it right when he sits down now, and this energy has to move. He's now lifting his back just in that little break behind the withers. That comes up quite a lot of times in this. That's not bad at all. He's doing really well. But you can see that he can only carry for like half a second down there, maybe. Right? Agree?
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm
Good
just
boy.
wondering if I should turn off this thing or just turn down the, because I think we forgot to turn off something.
Something.
Yeah, but now it's okay.
I got a good thing here. Now it can't say anything.
Right.
Right. So now we saw him sit down, and we saw him keep his withers much more engaged. So the musculature across the back now actually lifts the forehand without becoming too tense.
Can you say something about how you do this? Because I guess a lot of people will be interested in how you train the horse to sit like that.
All right. We have to see it once more, and as you can see in the how I give the aids, you see that. No, I'm just standing there really.
Yeah, because Aris
knows what he's supposed to train at, and I try to enforce a little bit of what I want to do. So I lift my stick over his butt to make him sit deeper, and I at the beginning here you can see it now again. You can see that I put the stick down just behind his knee to have him bend a little bit more in the knee, and then I lift the stick back up over his butt to make him sit deeper. So what I normally say that I use 3 positions with my stick when I want the horse to do something with his hind legs. The first position is lower down at the hock somewhere. The lower cannon.
Yeah.
Somewhere on the lower cannon. And the spot that makes the horse respond the easiest is the best spot to use. Sometimes that changes. You can touch one spot 3 times in a row, and then the horse doesn't want to move there again, and then you just tickle him somewhere else and he will come back and move again. So what I use that for is to make the horse move the hind leg forward. So timing to use that is the easiest way to teach this is to have the horse moving around you and then touch the leg just as it takes off from the ground. And after a while the horse thinks that it is because you're touching him that it takes the leg off the ground. Even if he was already walking. They're not all that smart really. So I do that little touch there, and that can also lengthen the stride depending on when I touch the horse on the leg. So if I wait until just before the hind leg lands, I can move it a little bit further. If I touch the leg before it takes off from the ground, I can make the horse sometimes take the leg off sooner. So I can change the sequencing a little bit of that diagonal that hangs there. The next spot is like we see here, just not on the rump but around the knee. So we saw a couple of times that I'm touching him just behind the knee, or I don't know if I'm touching him or I'm just pointing, but he knows anyway.
With him you could just point.
Yes, because he's been training this for a long time. So when you touch him just behind the knee, the idea is that the horse tries to take that point that you touch away from the stick. So when I touch him just behind the knee, he bends the knee. Which means you can't have the horse standing on that leg and have him bend it, because it'll just fold. So what I do is I touch him right there just before the leg touches the ground. I touch him just behind the knee. So I encourage the horse to bend the knee a little bit.
Right before he lands.
Yes.
So that he will cushion the...
Yes. So right before the leg lands, or even after the hoof has touched down, but before the weight comes to the leg. Depending on the horse and the feeling you have with the horse, then I couldn't explain if I wanted to how I always do it, because it changes all the time.
That is because you've practiced a lot.
Yes.
Because you need to practice.
Yes. I've worked a lot in hand for about 10 years, I think.
Yeah. So it's not something that you can just watch a video and then read a book and then you find. You have to just go out and do it.
again and again and again, and then go back to the video and see and ask and
with many
all sorts
horses.
of stuff. So just behind the knee to make the horse bend the knee a little bit more. And then now comes the difficult stuff, because I then take the stick up on top of the butt of the horse. So not on the
Croup.
not on the croup necessarily, but on the hill down towards the tail.
Yeah, that's a croup. Yeah.
So on that slanted part, somewhere there, depending on what the horse wants or needs or feels or what response you get. And you can do several things, and it will depend like 50% upon how this horse responds. You can, if you just hold the stick over there, quite a lot of horses will try and tuck their butt under. They also tend to become tense. Be careful with this stuff. You ask the horse for a lot of energy and power, and if you're in his way, he might walk you down. Be careful, right? So I put my stick on top of the croup somewhere to have the horse sit down a little bit deeper. But then I tend to do it two things at once. So if I get the horse to sit down, then when the horse has his weight firmly on the hind leg or legs, depending on what kind of gait this is, I give the horse a little bit of a tap on the butt like that, which makes the horse kick off with his hind legs.
Because then he wants to use those muscles.
Yes.
Because that is sort of an electric...
Yeah, it's like this.
Yeah.
And then it goes, and that tension then will go forward through the horse somewhere, at least the times when it doesn't come back.
Yeah.
Because what you ask for is for the musculature around the hip joints to fire stronger or more than the horse wants to for himself. And that will either mean that the horse will jump forward, move forward, whatever, or he'll kick out backwards. One of those is going to happen. Now that depends on your timing, and it depends on how much weight the horse actually carries on his haunches. Depends on how your horse responds to you and your stick and all that sort of stuff. But those are the 3 points I use. I use the cannon to move the hind leg forward. I use behind the knee to make the horse bend in the knee. I use on top of the croup somewhere to make the horse sit down deeper and or push off harder. You can move that around a little bit. Sometimes you move it down to the just underneath the tail, and sometimes you move it to actually at the top or even just in front of the top of the croup.
So can we see it again? So we could just repeat what you said.
Yeah. So here you can see that I'm pointing towards the back of the knee sometimes, like now, and now I'm back up to the butt, and you can see that I'm not quite certain. I want a little bit more push off and sit down, and we got all of it at once, and he did very well. So I'm very happy and just try to lead him carefully through the corner.
And he knows that he's been...
he knows he's been a good boy.
Yeah, he's always like very proud of himself when he's been tough. Because he feels cool when he does it.
Yeah, it's not really because I have told him that he's been good.
No.
It's because he can feel that was good. I did great. I was strong.
Yeah.
I was in control of my body or something. I don't know what he thinks, but that's what he expresses at least. Yeah. Right, once more this, and then we'll have the fourth one, right? Because there's one left, I believe. You can see he tries to sit down really well several times. Sometimes the hind leg moves back, and then he sits down really deep and well. And he sits down mostly, though, on his left hind.
Because he's stronger there.
Yeah. Typical. Almost all horses are.
About straightness, that which is in the next video. But I think it's important that we say that this is collection, and this is of course advanced collection. It's like piaffe and beginning of a levade. And that is not something that you begin with, of course. We've jumped from the 2 first points of the training scale to the most advanced one. That is because we thought it would be interesting to watch what we are aiming for through the whole training scales. And of course,
to see the span in between.
Yes, and of course you don't go right from looseness and rhythm to collection, but it's often nice to know what you can do. And also some of these things you can actually do with a young horse as well.
Yes, the touching, the working in hand and all that, you shouldn't expect the horse to sit down as much, and never ever put as much pressure on a young horse as I do put on Ares here, because carrying your whole weight in the hindquarters takes such concentration. This is I'm going to relate this to how people train again. The strongest people in the world, when they lift at their very maximum, they say that lifting that heavy teaches me to think while I strain.
And
this
you
is
can
important.
see that Ares actually is doing that.
You can see that he's trying to balance his weight on the hind legs, and you can feel it. You can feel the energy radiating. It's almost scary to stand that close. Not because he's going to come and fall over me or anything like that, because he's not.
No, he's concentrated.
He wouldn't touch me at all. But to feel all that energy and to know that he is keeping it willingly in control like that is amazing. But it's so much power. And don't ask that of a young horse, because he will do something completely different. He will find a very good way to get rid of that energy. That's for sure. Not for you, but for him. For her, even. All right.
But you can do a little, just trying to teach the horse how to react to the stick and stuff.
Move the leg forward, a little bit of bend in the knee, so that the horse, quite often the horses, they tend to sort of teach themselves to lock the hind legs out.
Yeah.
So teach the horse to not lock the hind leg out, just a little bit.
And you can do that with a 4-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would.
It's a very wise thing to do, so that the horse is more like aware of his body and what the body can do.
But very little at the time.
Very little.
And make sure to always not put pressure on the horse, so that the best way out is through you. Like Ares here with the fence on the outside and the corner in front. So I am the point of least resistance. He might choose to move through me. You can see here that he's just near the corner, and you can see when he walks forward now after he sits down really deep, and he moves forward, and we allow the energy out. Yeah.
There's something more I'd like to talk about before we leave this video, because many people don't understand how the hind legs are sort of gripping the ground and pushing the ground backwards and not landing like this. That is, it's very easy to see this on this video.
All right. Yeah.
So can you say something about that?
I can try. So you can see, especially if you focus on that left hind now, see that sometimes it moves back a bit, and now it starts to move forward again. And you can see how the whole hind leg says whoop, whoop.
Yeah, and it all does this.
Yeah.
Not this.
No, it doesn't slide forward. If it slides forward like that, it means that the front side of the thigh is active, and it will make sure that the horse drops his back. Almost completely certain.
So this is sort of the beginning of impulsion.
Yeah,
because
the grabbing of the ground.
Yeah.
And pushing oneself
So
forward.
that is something that you can look for in a younger horse as well.
Does
when
the
it moves
horse
forward,
kick sand forward or backwards when he walks? Have a look at that. That's important. I'm not saying it never should do forward and always should do backward or anything like that. The perfect is when the horse lands perfectly and doesn't kick up any sand. That means that all the energy actually went into the movement instead of anywhere else. So, but have a look, see what happens. It's interesting. The last video, I believe. So this is from the front, but you can still see he's trying to carry, and you can see that when he manages here in a second or two. There we go, and still trying to find, there we go. And that was balancing on the hindquarters. So that's the first time in this session that he managed to stand still on his hind legs and carry himself. If it drops through a little bit through the back, which means that somewhere there's not enough strength to keep that exercise.
Yeah, and we know the horse because he has had trouble with his back all his life.
That is true.
And especially lifting that point that you were talking about.
Behind the withers there.
Just sort of, there is a break in the line there. The withers go there, here is the back.
Yeah.
Exactly in that point, it's been very difficult for him to move and lift right there. So that is something that he has started to do just recently.
Yep.
So of course he's weak in that point.
He's weak in that area, but also it might be that he's not strong enough in the hindquarters to keep that, because
True.
The thing here is that you can imagine that you are setting down a bowl of salad on your glass table. That's not difficult. You can set it very calmly down like this, right? Imagine now that this bowl weighs 75 kilos. And now stretch out your... no, you can't stretch out your arms with 75 kilos in them.
No, like this.
And it'll be very difficult for you to put anything heavy carefully down. And that is because you move from fine motor control to rough motor control, which is something you use when you use a lot of power. So what we're trying to do is we create more strength in the horse, or ourselves for that matter, in order to become more precise with bigger or more stress in the system.
So the stronger you are, the more soft can you be?
Not in absolute terms. It doesn't mean if I'm stronger than you, it doesn't mean that my touch is softer than yours. But I can for sure put a 10-kilo thing softer down than you can.
Yeah, that was what I meant. Yeah.
Important distinction.
Yeah,
so I'm glad you asked. Can we see it again? And we'll see at the very end how he sits down and holds himself up for a second or two. Trying. And then he bounces about a little bit. Now, can I move out here? Can I move out there? And I say, bit more, boy. And he holds himself really well. You can see he stretches his back right back up after he has fallen through, because he feels that he's too tense. He also thinks, I believe, that he did good.
Yeah, he does.
So he sits down really deep, and you can see that it's difficult. You see he's swaying a little bit.
Yeah, and he's moving a little from side to side to find the straightness. And that is what... Can we say something about straightness? Straightness is important, or else he can't do it. Because if he's lifting with just one hind leg, it's impossible. Then he would just fall down on one side.
Yeah, we can say this is what I will say about straightness for today. We believe that straightness in the horses is like right-handedness or left-handedness in people. And most people are one or the other. Very, very, very few people are ambidextrous, I believe is the expression, which means that they're as good at things with both hands as the other hand. Very rare. Most people, some 80% or something like that, are right-handed, and the rest are left-handed or ambi. It seems like this might be even the split is even stronger with horses, so they have even more that are the same way. So it's important now that understand that if you feel that your horse is better this way or that way, that doesn't really matter, because there are so many different ideas that apply. It can be your crookedness, the horse's crookedness, what are you good at, what is the horse good at. There are so many things. But what we typically see is that the left hind wants to push off harder and do harder work than the right hind. That is what we typically see. We can see it here with Ares, that he was favoring the right hind I think is the correct expression. So carrying himself on the left more than on the right. So you can sort of see that the left is compressed and he's carrying, and it's in towards the center of his mass sideways. While the right is a little bit lighter and maybe off to the side just a little bit, stuff like that. So what I'm looking for is I try to always look for more relaxation and bend in the left hind and more push of power in the right hind. Almost always looking for those two things at the same time. That's how I address crookedness. And if I can make the horse do the same work with both hind legs, then the horse is straight as a board. It's not difficult to make the horse straight then. It is straight by definition.
Yeah. And we are going to talk more about straightness in another stream, because that is a part of the one step in the training scales. It's actually the one that it comes right before collection. But I thought it was nice to mention that now, because we can see how important straightness is for collection. And the straightness is not like having the neck straight or the back straight, but you
can't always even tell if okay, my horse falls towards one shoulder. That doesn't mean that this hind leg does too much or too little. It can mean both. It depends on what he's doing in the rest of the body. It's really difficult to put your hand on until you have seen it all the way through and tested it in many different areas and arenas even.
So it could be a good time to talk a little about the training scale, because how these things are sort of linked together. Because when you're talking about straightness, that is actually what you're saying is that the hind legs need to be have the same smooth or like strength and the same activity and the same stiffness or suppleness.
Yeah.
They need to function the same way, both.
Both hind legs need to be equally able to carry and equally able to push off.
Yeah. And
they almost never are. Oh, my horse has changed sides. That's not necessarily true. Probably you feel exactly like that, like the horse has changed sides. My horse is now better this way than that way. But that means that you have changed your level, and now you're asking the horse for something that is easier this way than it is the other way. Stuff like that happens all the time.
Or you're taking away blockage in the horse's neck or something like that.
Yeah. But the next thing here is you need the same carrying and the same pushing power in both hind legs. The tendency is that the left hind will push more for sure. And sometimes the right hind will carry a little bit more, but it won't push off. That is the normal thing that happens. But also, you will find that there's like an area you can carry this much, X amount, and you can push Y amount with both hind legs. But if you go to X plus something, then one leg can't handle that load. And this is important to adhere to, because these aren't absolute terms. You can develop the pushing power and you can develop the carrying power of both hind legs. And that's what all the sideways movements are for instance. And also the in-hand work will be very good at pinpointing exactly what you want to change.
So if we take the training scale, we're going backwards now
that was my thought. I just forgot to tell.
Yeah. So we're going from the point in the sixth step, that is collection, and then we have gone down to the fifth one, that is straightness. Yeah. And then we come to the fourth, that is impulsion. Yeah. And that is so important to understand, that impulsion means that the propelling power of the horse comes from the hind legs. So the hind legs are kicking off, like pushing off and lifting the back forwards to make a step.
And before you have that, it is impossible to know whether your horse is straight.
Exactly.
Because you can't measure whether the pushing... there is no pushing power.
No,
from the
because if
legs.
the horse is on the forehand, you don't know the hind legs at all?
No.
So you need
even if you can feel that one is stiff and one is different. You can feel that, but it doesn't mean that you have the power forward.
You must have impulsion,
yes.
And then you must have the contact, and then you must have the relaxation or the looseness, and then you have to have the rhythm. And so it was interesting to sort of look at the training scales from the top.
So you have to have both of these under control. If we can roll up the second to last video, is that possible, Eva? Look at that right hind, the off hind, the one we can't, the one furthest away. It steps back, and when he carries now, you can see that it even moves. Did you see that?
Yeah, it didn't carry anything, so we could just move it around. Yeah.
So he's not straight.
No.
Right?
But he's straighter than many.
Yes, and we're training him. He's not straight. He doesn't dare to take all that weight on that right hind, but he's training to try. And you saw when he was bouncing his butt back and forth in the last video, then you can see that he's trying to find out how do these things work properly. And then he carried himself much better on both hinds in the last one. Can we see that once more and then the last one? So watch the right hind. As he sits down to the deepest, he moves it around. Let's see. And here we go, and he moves it. Did you see that? So it's further forward underneath his belly. Well, that maybe he's carrying more. No, it's not carrying more on that. He actually lifts it while being down there. And then the last one. So now if we watch the same hind, the one to the left for us, which is his right hind, right? Now it was just flopping about. You see that?
Yeah. It's moving it outside.
Oh, and now he's wondering, do I have to? Oh, now he used both. And when he carried himself on both until he lifted the right hind off because it became too hard.
It's interesting.
So that shows a bit about the straightness and how the horse needs the same carrying power in both hind legs. And an interesting thing too is that with this horse, it's much easier to do a pirouette to the right.
Yeah.
Where you would think that the right hind was the most important, but the right hind doesn't want to carry. That's really why. But the thing is, of course, that the horse has 3 other legs that he pushes off with, and then that right hind, it just wants to bend and go away. So it's very easy to make him come around to that side. The litmus test for this is to try and bring him forward out of that pirouette. So when he grabs the ground with the inside right hind, try to make him lift forward in that stride. And you can feel whether the back just goes limp like a wet biscuit, or if he comes powering through and forward.
I know that you can use that trick sometimes just to impress people. You just take a horse and you do a pirouette. And then the horse just collapses over the right hind leg, and then everyone says, "Oh, you can do a pirouette," and then the horse has never done it before.
Of course, you just stop and jump off.
Yeah. So there are many ways you can do things in a wrong way, and it looks.
Another thing that would be possible is to, if you want the horse to do the pirouette to the left when he's stiffer on the left, sit on the right side.
Yeah. Because then the horse doesn't need to...
Then he can straighten out that inside hind, and you can just let him around. There's all sorts of little trickies that you can do. But we try to, teach the correct way. That's what we've been on about. All right. I think we've talked a lot about good stuff in the collection and strength. And I hope that you got a better idea about the difference between strength training, conditioning, like walking in the forest or mountains or whatever, and practice. When Ares is piaffing, he's practicing. But when he's sitting down, like in the last one here, he's definitely training.
And also the third video, when he was piaffing then, right before he was trying the levad, he was actually training in his piaffe as well.
Yeah, when he gets really, when he sits down really deep, then it's training as well. And,
so, are there any questions?
I need to say one more thing before we stop. It's not when I train the horse in hand, like we have seen here. Everything looks very organized, and it looks like I know exactly what I'm doing, and it looks like the horse does exactly what I ask at all times, but he doesn't, because I'm not asking him to do one precise thing. I'm telling him, can you train to sit down? That's what I'm asking. And then I'm looking at him and I'm like, maybe if you sit, maybe here, maybe bend your knee a little bit more. And I'm trying to aid him into a position where he can train himself and express all his power. And sometimes he piaffes. Sometimes he inverts his back. Sometimes he lifts and becomes really awesome. And all of those things happen. Sometimes he does a little bit of the tar-tar forward. And it's important then to understand that I'm not practicing at any particular exercise. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to train the horse to carry his weight on the hind legs.
That's important. And also, when you train the young horse, you're happy but with just this in the hind leg.
One tendency of good thing and I will stop.
Yep.
And jubilee over the horse a lot. I thought that was important to bring into the to bring into this at the end. So if you're training the horse to become stronger, then be happy when the horse expresses power in a good position. When you're practicing an exercise, don't ask for maximum power in the beginning. Ask for the horse to trot at the spot and then put more power in as you go along. Your aids can do that even when you sit on the horse, but also when you work the horse in hand, that is easily possible. So that's a lot of concepts. Come back to the video and ask more if you want. If there are any questions, there are questions?
There are two.
Ooh.
I have one that just fit perfectly with Hege's question.
All right.
Because you said there are 3 points where you used to stick on the horse.
I do, yes.
But lately you've added a 4th.
Yes.
With the tickling of the ribs.
That is true. Yeah.
And that fits perfectly, I think, with Hege's questions.
All right.
Which is, I'm still not quite sure how you manage to engage the back in the in-hand work. Is it possible to say something more about that, or is it mostly just developing feeling?
That's a good question. I will try and answer that in some depth. First and foremost, when I work the horse in hand, I have this. One of my strongest abilities is to ask for energy from the horse. It's just something I am, I think. It's something I need to turn off if I want the horse to be relaxed. So it's important to understand that this is my perspective, and I know that the questionnaire hasn't got the same energy expression that I have. But when I get the energy in the horse will quite often invert a bit, lift up in front, and then thus put the withers down, which is the question, right? How to lift the withers. First, I make the horse stretch forward. I try to help the horse down and forward with whatever is on his head. If it is
you do that halter, all the time. You do this with and you just pull
down and forward.
Yeah.
Down and forward. Just allow for it,
pulling the nose
try
forward.
To help the horse to stretch down and forward while energy. And this is the difficult part. Those two things at the same time. That's difficult. That's feeling, right? So I can't say that it isn't feeling, but it is definitely feeling, but it is those two things. Bring the hind end to be active and then help the horse forward. And then the third point that Thea was trying to talk about is that I have added another thing that I tend to do a little bit. I take the back part of the stick and I just sort of drag it up onto the
sternum?
The sternum and up towards the chest and towards me a little bit, so to one side, which helps the horse to lift in the middle. He just lifts there, and I don't do anything else at that moment. I can do that while the horse is moving, but that's really difficult and really hard to not be overrun by the horse when you ask for that. So I want to encourage to do that. But when you're standing still with your horse, try to first feel with your hand, maybe in the rein, if that's what you're using, or in the cavesson, or even if you're just using a halter. Try first to have the horse relax forward, so you can feel sort of the horse becomes bouncy, so soft, like a bathing ball, something like a little bit of a soft bounce to it, not slap the ball bounce, not like a handball, but that soft thing. And when it's relaxed like that, then try and lift the sternum a little bit and see how much the horse lifts his or her back. And if you're really awesome, then you can do that and then touch the hind leg with the other end of the stick in the same movement. Then you can make the horse lift the withers and bring the hind leg under at the same time. And if the horse does that, you can see their eyes go, "Oh, what's that?" Quite often.
But I know something else that you often do. When the horse is sitting down, before the horse is sitting, you stretch the head forwards.
Yeah.
And then the horse is starting. Then you do this. And you push the head backwards so the back comes up.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
That is difficult.
That's feeling.
I've not done that so many times that I can't always do it anymore. Yet, I mean.
But yeah.
But that's the thing you can do. You take your hand like that. The horse is sitting down now, and you can first make the back come up a little bit, hand down a little bit, stick on the butt a little bit, and make the horse come up in the middle. And then when the horse lifts his front and sits down in the back, when that happens, it doesn't happen every time, but when it does, then you can lift your hand with the horse and use your hand to sit the horse down deeper, and then you can make it jump even. That is possible to do. That's one good way to teach the courbette and stuff like that. I'm not extremely well trained in the courbette yet. I've done it 6 times or something, but I've tried it. So that is possible to do. But first and foremost, make sure that you make the back relaxed, so the horse is sort of bouncing a little bit before you ask for the hind legs and before you ask for the sternum to lift.
Important.
I think that should answer Hege's question. Yours too?
I do.
Good. Any more? Brilliant. Then we've been perfect. Next episode will be on January the 19th. Still, of course, we want you to like us on Facebook if you haven't already. Share suggestions. Too few of those. Share suggestions. Ask, and you might receive. Thanks for watching us, of course. And before we say goodnight, I'm just going to tease this a little bit. We will, at some point in the not too distant future, put all of these out on YouTube, and we will start streaming on YouTube when we get that far, just so you guys know. It's a handier means of
it's easier to
communication.
Yeah.
Easier to find things, all that stuff, all that good stuff. And that's really what I wanted to say today. Happy with today's thing?
Yes.
Clink. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Thanks.